Voices serves as the megaphone for individuals who have endured transformational change. By highlighting trials and triumphs, our desire is to create a safe space for pivotal conversations, which in turn will deepen the story and provoke hope for you, our listeners. As you may know, change is never easy, but it is inevitable. You are not alone in what you're facing. Your transformation is possible, purposeful, and now. And here's Erin Wiggum, founder and managing director of New You, with this week's guest.
Welcome to another edition of New Voices. My name is Aina Wiggum, and I'm your host. I'm also the managing director of New, which really is a way for talent to imagine, discover, and actualize a 2.0 version of this. We have a wonderful episode here for you today. This is a dear friend of mine who I haven't known an extremely long period of time, but we just have a kindred spirits. And immediately when we met, we connected and we stayed in touch and we look out for each other and for our best interests. And so I really am excited for you all to meet her and for her to be able to share some of her story with us today. All right. And so you're in for a treat. This woman is dynamic. She is a formal model. She did runway. She is an extremely amazing thought leader. She is a strategist to the core. She is accomplished. She is the definition of poise. She just brings a glow to whatever she puts her hands to. And I'm just so glad that she's my friend. I'm so glad that we've gotten a chance to connect and bond in this way. And so I bring to you none other than the amazing Aina Fadina. Welcome, Aina.
Thank you, Erin. What an introduction. Thank you so much. It's really an honor to be here, and I'm so incredibly happy and just proud of all the things that you're accomplishing, all the lives that you're changing, and really how you're impacting, how people choose to wake up every single day and how they want to, just how you want to live your life, right? So thank you, and I'm just excited to be, and thank you for giving me my flowers. I love that.
Absolutely. So yeah, I'm really. This has been a long time coming. We've had some dates move and whatever, and so I'm excited to have this conversation with you today, with our audience. And so, as we always do, Aina, we start at the beginning. So we just want to hear, what is the Aina Fadina story from the beginning, or wherever you like to start.
Oh, I always say, when does that story or when does that journey begin, right? And I'll say that, my name is Aina for a reason. I was born in Lagos, Nigeria, to two amazing, incredible parents. I have 5 phenomenal siblings. And really, everything that I do, they are my compass for everything. So really, my journey began when I came into this world. And I'm called Aina because I was born with the umbilical cord around my neck. And, when I think about what that means about survival, about resilience, about grit, about hustle, I literally fought to come into this world alive.
Wow.
I think that is when that journey began for me, because I was able to enjoy the sweetness of being born into this amazing family. But my journey into the world was one of struggle for myself and my mother, right?
Wow.
And the physicians who had to make sure that so I think for me, that is when my why, and that is when my journey truly began, because I understood what it means to survive in this world. With the foundation, with the values, with the morals, with the lessons of my incredible parents, my grandparents, and really just being surrounded by love from the moment at which I came into this world. So that's when my journey began, honestly speaking. I don't know if that's the answer you wanted, but and then that journey evolves with every age and every period of time of your life, when it's a different journey, a different experience, a different level of excitement, a different level of pain, endurance, and just standing up for what you believe in as well too. So yeah.
Okay. And so when did you make the journey to the States?
So I moved to the States. Now you're going to make me date myself,
Oh,
but
you don't have to give a time. You could just say age, your age.
it's all good. I think the time matters so people
Okay.
understand sort of
Yeah.
like, so I
What
moved
was
to the
going on at
States
that?
sorry?
They can understand what was going on at that time.
Exactly,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly. So I moved to the States when I was 13 years old. And that's an interesting point in time, right? When
yeah.
you're sort of like a teenager moving into a new country. And yes, I had traveled to the West before on multiple occasions. My family went to London every summer.
Mhm.
My sisters went to boarding school in England, but there's something different about visiting a place versus living in the place, right?
Absolutely.
And then this was 95, New York City, concrete jungle, the era of Rudy Giuliani in New York City, the era when we had to go through metal detectors to get into school, which was very, very different from how I grew up going to a private school in Lagos. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
In addition to that, just understanding what was going on culturally and
Mhm.
how, for example, hip hop was shaping the future of what the culture is in the States, right?
Yep.
In addition to that, but also moving at 13, at where you're kind of slightly coming of age. And I was meant to actually go into the eighth grade based off my age, but my mother, being who she is, fought for me to stay in my grade, which was the 10th grade. So
Mhm.
just imagine being a 13-year-old African new immigrant kid in the 10th grade, going through metal detectors in her school. It was like a bit of a mind, you know what. So,
Wow. Wow.
yeah,
Let's
but
wait.
it was a great
Let's not act
experience.
like that was normal. Hold on. Let's pause there. A 13-year-old in the 10th grade. Oh my goodness, that had to be such a shocking experience. And maybe that's where a lot of the maturity comes in too. It's like
Mm,
you actually had to be ahead of the curve because
definitely.
at 13, I don't know where my mind was at 13, but it
Yeah.
wasn't on the 10th grade level. I promise you that.
Yeah, I think like I grew up with three older sisters, right? So
Okay.
there's a level of maturity that you have,
Yeah.
and then intellectually, socially, there's a level of sort of curiosity that you have as well too. And my parents were very, very when it came to academia, they
Yeah.
did not play. Like we had tutors come into the house from the age of like 6 years old.
Wow. Okay.
So it was something that, from an academic perspective, it wasn't really a challenge.
Okay.
Socially, not so much because I had older sisters,
Okay.
but to some degree, I will say that there were nuances where you're like, okay, people are speaking in this particular way. This is not my language, or this
Yeah.
is not how I speak. And if I go home, I'm gonna get smacked.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
just like the American culture was very, very different from like, how I grew up. But at the same time, my parents had very Western sensibilities, even though when we walked into our household, you were very much in a
Great.
Nigerian household. You know what I
Got
mean?
it.
There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But they understood the importance of them giving us a little bit of breathing room to experience what life in America truly is.
Yeah.
I did have to grow up very, very quickly because, when you move here, when things are always done for you in Nigeria, where, you had services, like everything was done, right?
Mhm.
And then you move to America and you have to wash the
You
dishes,
better do it
you
yourself.
have to
Yeah.
wash your clothes, and you
Right.
have to make sure before mommy and daddy gets home that you start, blending the pepper. Every Nigerian will relate to this. Or you
Mhm.
bought the meat out of the freezer as soon as you woke up in the morning because mommy and daddy already left the house. So there's a
Right.
certain level of like, becoming a mini house manager
Mhm.
when your parents had to go hustle in a different way that they hustled when they were in Nigeria. So yeah, it was challenging, but I'm happy for the experience.
And let me double down a little bit on that, like the code switching that you're speaking to. So like you had to be one way in school and assimilate, but at home you were very much in a Nigerian home. Can you talk about how like that code switching even plays into your work today or throughout your evolution?
Absolutely. I think, and I go back and forth about the code switching, right?
Yeah,
Because ultimately speaking, you should be able to be who you are and
authentically.
think
Yeah,
authentically into like
yeah,
any place that you're in.
yeah.
Or if you think about just being even Nigerian alone in Nigeria, there's a
Hmm.
level of code switching that we had to historically do because English is not our first language.
Right.
it's not, well, rather, it's not our native language. So
Exactly.
we had to code switch from a very, very young state of existence
Mhm.
due to colonization, the power and the influence that the English culture had on Africans.
Yeah.
And then you move to America. So it was easy to kind of assimilate because you're like, okay, like when I speak to my grandmother, I have to code switch from my grandmother to some degree, code switch to my parents. And this is just early on,
Right.
code switch to like the uppity, kids in Nigeria. So code switch is something that we're just used to.
Wow.
And I think coming to America, yes, there were challenges where, as an immigrant that had an accent, or that still, when I see certain things, I still have an accent,
Mm-hmm.
where you're seen as being different, but
Mm-hmm.
you just simply have to learn to exist in other people's spaces, even within the context of your race, even within the context of your nationality as well, too. If I go to the northern part of Nigeria, I have to assimilate to their culture versus the culture where I grew up in the southwest region of Nigeria. You know what I mean? So it's not just code switching in terms of language, it's code switching culturally and being
Cultural. Yeah.
respectful, quite
Yeah.
frankly, of the lay of the land of where you are.
Mm. Wow. That's a lot. While being 13 in the 10th grade. Okay. Okay. And so take us along this journey. So you go off to college upon completing high school. You go off to college, and you went to Northwestern, correct?
No, I went to Temple for undergrad,
Oh,
2 years.
undergrad. Okay. Okay. Okay.
The
Got you.
undergrad,
All
so
right.
I was 16 when I went to college, and I actually went to, so my parents moved to Philadelphia. I went to 4 different high schools to kind of give you context as well, too. So
Oh my
those more,
God.
so 4 different high schools. Just my parents just always kept chasing the best school district for us, right?
Got it.
And they didn't really think about what are the implications of 4 different high schools, but for them it was like that's a better school district.
Yeah.
And that had its own effect, right? Socially, where I didn't have friends in high school, my sisters were my friends.
Right.
And also I just went to school and came home and did homework, did not socialize, didn't go to prom, didn't go to football games.
Mhm.
I was like, what is this homecoming thing that we go like? Why would you go sit outside in the cold to go watch a football game? I just
Right.
did not understand it. I didn't get it. But I graduated high school in Philadelphia and then went to Temple for undergrad at the age of 16. And the first year I wanted to live I couldn't go to New York. And I also wanted to take a gap year. And my parents were like, what? Like, what are you talking about?
Right.
So first year I lived at home. So I commuted because I was too young. And then sophomore year, I told my parents I wanted to move on campus. And that senior year, I would move back, and that I made them buy me a car for senior year. So I moved back home. So,
Okay.
I learned my negotiation skills quite earlier on in my life.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Good. Good. And so you get through that whole period. Do you go straight into the grad school or no?
No. So, wow, I graduated Temple at the age of 20. I wanted to be a doctor, like, a lot of immigrant kids, and not because of my parents, quite frankly.
Mhm.
But for me, I said, what would make sense for the sacrifices that my parents made coming to this country? Like, my parents are very much about figure out what you want to do. As long as you're a good person, you do well at whatever it is that you want to achieve. And if something isn't working for you, ask yourself, why didn't I get an A in this class? And then you go back and fix it. It wasn't, you know what I mean? So it was very much about, you're going to make mistakes. You have to learn from your mistakes kind of deal. So
Right.
when I graduated at Temple and then said I want to take a gap year, my parents were like, what are you talking about, this gap year thing?
Mhm.
So eventually I started working for a biotech company, actually, which was because I wanted to be a doctor, but I was quite young. I thought work for a couple of years and get a bit of experience.
Mhm.
And then when I worked for the biotech company, I realized I was more fascinated by the role that innovation and technology had to play in the healthcare space. As we think about access, as we think about delivery, and as we think about how, as patients, we can reimagine what healthcare can be, the experience can be for patients and the community as well, too.
Yeah,
So
technology.
at that point, I was going to go back and get my MBA and focus in healthcare management. So shifted from taking the MCAT to the GMAT, was working for this biotech company, selling heart devices, get in my car, listen to the radio, go from one doctor to another doctor, to another doctor, to another doctor. And then I randomly got scouted to do a random fashion show in Philadelphia. Was not, trust me, I never saw myself in that light. But I said, why not take the opportunity to just, do something interesting? You're still young enough to experience this.
Yeah.
So I started modeling in the Philadelphia area in the evenings. I would come to New York on the weekends to do like modeling jobs while doing my full-time job, invested in real estate in Philadelphia as well too. And I was like 22, 23 at this point. And at the age of 23, I got laid off the biotech company. And, I went home in tears. Even though I invested in real estate, I still lived at home with my parents. So I went home crying. And my dad looked at me and was like, what are you crying for? Like, I was like, I just never learned. I didn't understand what being laid off meant.
Yes.
And I was like, it happens to older people, not to young people. My dad literally said, this modeling thing you're doing, why not move to you're in New York every weekend? Why not move to New York and pursue modeling full time? And I said, okay. And my mom agreed. So I had really, really amazing parents. So I moved to New York, and I thought I would just do it for 2 years, get the interesting B school application story. Like, okay, from pre-med to biotech to fashion model. And I moved to New York, and I modeled for about 13 years, a little over 13 years, where I worked for global brands like Oscar de la Renta, Fendi, Versace, Acris. Acris is a Swiss German company, Bergdorf Goodman, Neiman Marcus. And then that fashion experience working with the design studios, I did runway initially. But at the age of 23, 24, I had bills to pay. I'm not going to cattle calls. I was like, okay, I could have these clients who are going to book me consistently.
Right.
And that experience really taught me to what the business of fashion truly meant. So what is it like to work behind the scenes of fashion? So from idea in someone's head to the sketch, right? And then from that sketch to what we call the toile, which is like what they fit before they actually make the fabric. And my frame was what was being used for that. And then when we sell to, individuals like, God rest his soul, Andrew Leotali would come into the design studio, and a Wintour would come in to reveal the collection before the fashion shows would happen. And then they would have the runway, the big models run, do the runway show. And then I would be the model that would then sell the clothes to the Bergdorf Goodman. So what you saw in the retail stores, I would be the one that the buyers would come in to see in the clothes, right?
Got it.
So, and then I also would then do trunk shows in the Bergdorf and Neiman's. I would walk around the store wearing the clothes, talk to customers. So I then knew who the end customer looked like. So I was able to see their entire cycle of fashion. I was able to also understand sort of like the importance of consumer mindset, the importance of legacy of a brand, the importance of storytelling. And also just understanding every single part of the value chain of fashion, and also seeing how the internet impacted retail as well too. So, and also who the global consumer is, because, when I was modeling, like the peak of my career, the American consumer was no longer the number one consumer. It became Dubai was number one. China was number one. Africans were going to Dubai and London and Paris to buy things, right? So those were people who were buying for a different customer segmentation. So they were buying differently than what New York was buying, than what Dallas or San Francisco was buying. So I was really able to understand, like, this is the way consumers think globally. So, through that experience, I was like, okay, I was always entrepreneurial, just because when you're modeling, that you have, there's a point in time where you have to move to the next stage of your career. And I said to myself, I'm still doing well. I'm still making money. Why not start your own business? I actually saw a coach. I believe in the importance of just seeing life coaches, therapists, like whatever you need to see to take yourself out of your situation to kind of help you look in. So I started seeing a coach, and I was like, should I go back to business school now? And she's like, what do you actually want to do? Why not start that business before you then go to grad school? So I started my own consulting company, consulting for small emerging fashion, lifestyle, and retail brands. And I would, still modeling. So during the low season in New York, I'll go to London, go to Lagos, get clients, come back to America. And I started producing content just because I realized the power of like ownership, of owning your own story and your own as a brand, what that matters when you take ownership of that experience and what you convey to your consumers. And then I started my web series called Eye of Africa, which is the inspiration, individualism, and innovation of Africa, where I interviewed creatives, entrepreneurs, and investors who were inspired by Africa through a global lens. So I was very busy. I was doing a lot.
To say the least,
And around 2015, 2016, I was being invited to all the business schools around the country to speak about my entrepreneurial experience.
Mhm.
So, the Harvards of the world, the Northwesterns of the world, the Whartons, the Columbias, during the African Business School Conference. And at that point, I had this revelation. I was like, it's time. So I gave up modeling, moved back to Philly to be with gotta save money.
Mhm.
Took the GMAT and then applied to Kellogg, Kellogg School of Management, which is Northwestern's business school, to their executive MBA program. And it was important for me to go to a top tier school
Mhm.
because I understood all the you haven't done this, you haven't done that, you haven't done this, you haven't done that. And I
The
said,
disqualifiers. Yeah.
disqualifiers,
Yeah.
absolutely. As I knew what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And rather than me having more obstacles in my way, I was like, I am going to go to a top tier school
Mhm.
and deal with the rejections of every other school.
Mhm.
But I was determined to get into a top tier program.
Mhm.
And I remember when I was doing the GMAT, my mom was like, I got tutors. Like, full disclosure, I got tutors to take the GMAT. I think I took it like 3 times. And my mom was like, just go to Temple is a great school. Just go to Temple, go to Villanova. And I know those are amazing, phenomenal schools.
Mhm.
However, I knew that even, this is going to sound really, really crazy, but people were like, oh, but you're just a model. Like,
Yeah.
that was a disqualifier.
Yeah. 100%.
So for me, I said to myself, I will not give you any reason to doubt my brilliance or to doubt my intelligence.
Right.
And sometimes I go back and forth about that because why do we always have to go to those schools in order to get in the rooms when our counterparts don't have to do that?
Yes.
But anyway, that's another conversation.
That's this conversation too. Yeah. but before you go on, let me just give your dad some flowers right here, because what vision it took for him to be able to say, pick your head up. I know you just lost your job. You're doing this other thing. Go, like, you have the grace to go and explore. I want you to go explore. Like, you've been on this trajectory and you've been focused and you've produced, and I'm proud of you. But now, but I want you to spread your wings. India Arie has a song. A bird cannot fly until it breaks its shell, right? And your dad gave you the grace to be able to say, like, go break your shell and fly. And if you don't land, I'm here for you. But you will make it, because like, you've proven yourself. So I just want to give your dad some flowers right here. And I've never met him before, I don't know him. But that takes a lot of strength and vision, especially when he is working, he and your mother are working as hard as they are.
Yeah.
Migrating a family over here, learning this system, they wanted a more, I would imagine they would want a more surefire bet than what the modeling industry could afford you.
Yeah.
But that grace is necessary for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
And to be able to have that runway, no pun intended, to have that runway to kind of figure out your life, your worth, your tenacity, your resolve, like who you are as an adult, like all of that takes a lot. It takes a whole lot.
Yeah, and you know what? I am standing before you because of my parents, right?
Yeah.
And I think my dad is who he is because of his mother. And also the kind of woman that he married as well too, because of the way that my mother's father and mother raised her.
Okay.
So when we talk about the influence of like this generational connectivity, my parents are who they are because of who their parents were. I am who I am because of who my parents are as well too.
Yeah.
And my mother, my dad is like my ace. Like the fact that, to your point, I can till today as a grown woman, I can still go home and be like, it did not work out. And I still have my bedroom in my parents' house.
Yes. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I get it. Yeah. And my mother, she, like, she, 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 she
people talk about reinvention.
Mm.
People talk about when you have to, when life happens, you hold your head up high
Mm.
and you keep pushing forth and you reinvent yourself based on
Yeah.
circumstances.
Yeah.
Like both of my parents, between the day that from when I was born till today, they've re-evolved and evolved many, 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 many careers.
Mm.
So because they did it, I knew that it was possible for me to do it. You know what I
Exactly.
mean?
Yep.
And my mother is just like I said, my father, I truly believe that, he grew up with all men in his house. Like he
Mhm.
had 4 brothers and he had 5 daughters and 1 son. So, so I think that female empowerment was important to him,
Mm.
not just because he had girls, but he married the kind of woman that he married.
Got it. Makes
You
sense.
know what I mean?
Yep.
I think that plays a huge difference when you think about how are we going to choose to raise our children,
Yeah.
especially our daughters
Yeah.
and our sons, because,
Yeah.
let's not negate that. But
Right.
so we want to make sure that when they go into the world, that there's nothing that's
They're
stopping them.
equipped. Yeah, they're equipped.
Absolutely.
100%.
At the same time, recently I've been having conversations, with myself and with dear friends of mine when I say that, a lot of parents who wanted their kids to aspire for everything, to be everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was a disillusion to some degree about like, oh, I'm going to go into the world and or you can't stop me.
Yeah.
But the water's not ready for you.
No, at all.
The water's not ready for you. So you then go to you're like, oh shit. Well, daddy told me and mommy told me and how I was raised is not how the world is receiving me because I'm too much.
Exactly. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
There's just so many was wrong. Okay, so let's stay in the modeling zone right here for a minute. Just another minute or two. So let's talk about what it felt like to be in some Oscar de la Renta or some like what did it feel like to actually make your own way? Like you didn't follow a path of modeling or a path of you weren't prepped for this since you were 5 years old and do pageants and all. So you're just breaking into what did it feel like to break in and actually make it in and then make a lifestyle out of it? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Honestly, I've had a pretty amazing life.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
But I will say that number one, I was lucky to have I wasn't groomed for it, right?
Exactly.
So I think that was important about how I was able to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't chasing to be a supermodel. Like I love Naomi Campbell, I love Linda Evangelista, I love Cindy Crawford. Like those were Kristen Turlington. I just watched Supermodels on Apple TV.
Okay.
Those were the epitome of beauty.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not see myself, I didn't even think about it because I was like, my job on this earth is to be an academically smart person.
Right.
So the notion of beauty was not even high school. I was like, my job here is to get a great education.
Yeah.
But what modeling allowed me to do was to own myself, own my power, come into this sense of womanhood and sense of self that I think the industry breaks a lot of women. I'm not going to deny that. For a lot of women, it's their downfall because they place their existence on beauty.
Exactly.
But because I never did that, for me, I was like, wait, I could make this amount of money in one day.
Yeah.
Shit.
Where I got the sign.
I signed the paper. But I think to me, it was a job. You know what I mean? I didn't care about the fancy, well, I'm flying here, I'm flying there. For me, it was like, oh, I'm able to make this amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
Just to show up and be pretty, in quotes, whatever pretty is.
Right. Yeah.
And then it was also a state of existence where I was able to be a chameleon as well too, based on the different outfits that I was wearing.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was not the traditional sense of beauty of what I thought I saw in the magazines, but these brands embraced me, and my hair was natural. My hair is so natural. That's another conversation for a different day.
Okay.
I was able, and this was when afros were not in. This was 2005-ish, 6. This was when we weren't seeing the dark-skinned black girl,
right,
with a natural hair, and this eye fashion brands were embracing me. I
Mm.
remember one time I had to get a weave done for another job, and I went to work with my weave, and the client was like, "Ina, please take that off tomorrow. By tomorrow, when you come into work, I need your natural hair back." So I was
Mm.
lucky to have these brands who were
Embraced it.
trying to redefine what
Yeah.
beauty in the industry was.
Yeah.
Um, and also, people don't believe this, but I am an introvert by nature.
Mhm. I can
But
believe that.
with modeling, I was able to put on a show in a way. Like you'd literally wear an Oscar gown, and
Mhm.
you are just like no one can stop you,
You're
or you
somebody else. Yeah.
you're somebody else, or you
Yeah.
wear like this amazing dress from McQueen, and you're like, damn, I am a woman. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like you're just powerful.
Yeah.
So I think with the foundation that I had, the upbringing that I had, the experiences that I had, um, and then just living in New York, like,
Mhm.
and I had like all my friends were young, black, powerful,
Mhm.
smart. Like I hang out with a few models, but when
Mhm.
work was done, I was going to hang out with my friends who went to Temple, we went
Yeah.
to Penn, Harvard, like,
Right.
Spelman, like, and we lived in Harlem.
Right.
So there was this emergence of people who I was sheltered by as well, too, to ground me in my existence, where
Mm.
fashion was a mirage. That was not real life.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, honestly speaking, like the brands that I worked for, oh my gosh, I am beyond lucky to be able to have that experience.
Mhm.
And also, you know why you're doing it. I knew it
Mhm.
wasn't a forever thing. I'm like, I'm gonna wear this till the shoes fall off, kind of
Yeah.
deal. I was trying to become like retire as a model. Absolutely
Right.
not. So I think
Yeah.
that also gave you perspective as well too.
That's good. No, that's good. I'm so glad you touched on that. What would you say was your biggest day in that career? What was the like mom you called your mom and said, "Mommy, I can't believe I'm doing it." Like what was that biggest moment, would you say?
There were too many.
Okay. Okay.
There were too many. I would say, gosh, well, that's a good question. Okay, it was probably, I would say the first job that I did actually, and I'll tell you the first sort of big job that I did.
Okay.
So Acris is a Swiss German company. People don't really know them, but like
They're a big
just,
deal.
oh
Yeah.
my goodness. Like
Yeah.
if you understand sort of like, architectural way of design,
Mhm.
Acris is one of them.
Got it.
So I did a job for Acris in Philadelphia at the Neiman Marcus Mall in King of Prussia.
Mhm.
And I remember that day very, very clearly was the day, it was like the first day that was like my first runway show, like proper runway show.
Mhm.
Everybody else around me was like 16. And there were a few ladies who were younger. I'm older, just given the Philadelphia market.
Mhm.
But it was the first time I got my makeup done professionally,
Mm.
like in terms of the runway show. I'd done it
Right.
for photo shoots before, which is a enclosed space.
Right.
But a fashion show, you have lights in front of you, you have
Yep.
people, you have the
Yeah.
designer that came. And I was not only the opening model, I was a closing model of the show.
Okay.
And I had my afro, and I remember just walking down that runway, and I was like, wow.
Mhm.
And then when I moved to New York, they remembered seeing me in Philadelphia, and they became my number one consistent client. And
Mm.
then from that, all the businesses continued to just come and come and come. And then when there would be interns who worked at Oscar or wherever, when they would then get their full-time jobs,
Mhm.
they would call my
Yep.
agent. They were like, "We want to book Aina," because guess what? When the show was done, I
Yeah.
stayed behind
Yeah.
to hang up the clothes on the rack.
Wow. Okay. So you still that humble beginning is still played out, and yeah, I get
Oh,
it.
absolutely, because that
Yeah.
wasn't my house. So you can't just
Exactly.
like when you go from one look to another,
Yeah.
you're like, I can change in like 15 seconds, right? So
Right.
you don't have, but when the show was done, it was like, okay, what can I help you with? Okay, I can hang it up this way. And I will thank every single dresser.
Mm. Mm.
So it wasn't just about the designer, it was about the CEOs of the company. It was about who was booking me. It was about the dressers who were like dressing you during the show. So
Yeah.
you were not too big or too small for me to engage with.
Wow. Wow. I get it.
And that's the reason why I modeled for as long as I did.
I get it. Makes sense. So let's segue to where we met in Tulsa, originally at the centennial of the Tulsa Race Massacre, and we flew a bunch of people in and had a very memorable week, powerful week, especially for Black Tulsa and for Blacks in America, who kind of converged on Tulsa. And it was just, it was very organic and very impactful, to the point that we're still talking about it 3 or 4 years later now, right? But that's where we first engaged and kind of locked in, and it led to you actually moving to Tulsa. And so you talked about going to school at Kellogg and getting that business degree and not being a birthing into the tech space, or excuse me, into the VC space. And so can you talk a little bit about that, being a Black woman in venture capital and in your experience while in Tulsa, what kind of led you there and led you through here?
So when I came to Tulsa for Centennial, I'd heard about the race massacre, but much later in life, right? Like most people. And a friend of mine, Dozier, and Dozier is still a dear friend. I actually met Dozier during the business school hustle. Like we were
nice.
like I met him. It was Columbia. They had like that diversity day, and I had on like this crazy gray braids, crazy outfit. And Dozier was like, "Who are you? And we have to be friends." So he was working for
Shout out to Dozy. That's my guy, Dozy. Yes.
So he was in Tulsa working for the venture arm of the George Kaiser Family Foundation at Atento Capital. And he was like, "Aina, just come down." I was like, okay. And this was like post-vaccination. We were coming out of, I guess, wave 1/2 of COVID.
Yeah.
And I felt that it was imperative to really try to understand this lay of the land where you had Black millionaires, which we were not used to hearing that narrative of the existence of Black Americans who had businesses, not artists, not entertainers, and not performers.
Yeah.
And nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? Yeah. But Black people who were running $1 million business and serving their community, and this entire neighborhood genocide literally happened to these people. So, when I came down to Tulsa, it was one of those things where it was just beautiful to be in a sea of Blackness.
100%.
People from different parts of the country, different parts of the world, to some degree, conveyed together, sort of like Midwestern, Southern. I don't know what you guys consider. What's Tulsa? Is it?
It's Midwest. It's Midwest. Yeah.
Ish.
Yeah. It's a little bit of everything, but it's Midwest.
Exactly. So, that was a beautiful experience to then understand the story of, people that actually lived through that experience, the survivors who were some of, I think it was like 3 or 4 who were still alive.
Right.
To then understand the impact of the work, like that folks like the George Kaiser Family Foundation and the Schurterman Foundation are doing to make sure Tulsa can be an inclusive tech place in the country and, quite frankly, in the world.
Yep.
And it takes a lot of balls and courage to then say, what is my legacy beyond sort of the socioeconomic things that I do for tax purposes, right? But to really help drive change within this ecosystem, and how can we reimagine what wealth looks like for people that were stripped away, that it was stripped away from.
Yes.
And it actually led me to reading this book called, I think it was called The Black Millionaires or something, which is a fantastic, it's a short read. And it was a story of about, I think, 8 or 9 Black millionaires in the late of the 1800s into the early 1900s.
Okay.
And they focused on Tulsa doing that as well. So that kind of like gave me a visualize, not just hearing the stories, but to actually see where these atrocities against humanity actually happened. And when I eventually, met the folks at the Atento, I shared what I wanted to do, what I was passionate about. And, I got a job offer. I actually had 2 other offers on the table, which was a tough decision.
Yeah.
And I went back to read my business school essay. And the conclusion of my business school essay was to basically invest in entrepreneurs and founders who have been underrepresented in different industries, and be able to provide not just access to capital, but help them think about operational excellence and efficiencies within their businesses around the world.
Got it.
That was my business school essay. Okay. And within 2 years,
you're doing it.
came
Yeah.
to me.
Wow.
And that was the reason, that was my anchor to why I moved to Tulsa, honestly
Got it.
speaking.
Yeah.
And, I met folks like you who are doing just impressive, amazing work. The In Tulsa team, the Atento team, the
Mhm.
Tulsa Innovation Lab team, the Build in Tulsa team, Act House,
Mm-hmm.
Lightship Capital. And there was just a lot of activity on the ground, and it was just like really, really exciting to be part of the reimagination of an ecosystem.
Yes.
And Tulsa was not going to be my forever. I think I told everyone that from day one. I was like, I
Right.
was here
Right.
for it. I'm going to get
Yeah.
out of here because I'm a city girl.
Yeah.
not like not Carisha and JT. But I love them.
Yeah.
But I love cities. But I knew that I needed to reset
Mm-hmm.
to propel myself forward.
Got it.
And sometimes you not necessarily take a step back, but just literally say, how can I go through a different path to get to where I'm trying to get to?
Right.
And it was an incredible experience. I learned a
Mhm.
ton about venture capital. I think when I was in Tulsa at the time, I believe that I was the only Black woman that I would say that was able to drive decisions
Mm-hmm.
of what companies are being invested in or what operational support looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there was another one, maybe two, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I learned a great deal, made incredible connections. So what it was like to kind of think about how you build a venture capital firm as a venture arm of a family foundation, and how you even brand yourself in a city that's known for oil and gas historically, right?
Right.
But then you're now investing into ed tech companies, fintech companies, where the infrastructure for those industries are not quite there, but they're building to get to that point.
Exactly.
That was exciting to be part of something new, something exciting.
Yeah.
And Tulsa was great, but at the same time, and I met the most incredible people. Honestly speaking,
Mhm.
I actually saw Dominic in San Francisco randomly in a hotel lobby last
Oh, wow.
weekend. Yeah. I did randomly.
Wow.
But
Shout outs to Dom Artist. That's my guy. Yeah. Shout
from
out.
my house, doing
Yes.
amazing work in Tulsa.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I think one thing that people of color, immigrants, and
Mhm.
women, and then for me, I have all those. I am all those.
All
things
of
in
those.
one, right?
Right.
We do not realize the personal sacrifices that we make
Mm-hmm.
in order for us to achieve our professional success.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I felt that at this point in my life, I just could no longer make those personal sacrifices for professional achievements anymore.
Yeah.
And I missed my family. I missed my friends. I missed being able to just pick up and walk down the street. And, it's Brooklyn. Brooklyn is crazy. But the people around, I just, it's a place where there are people who think like me, who look like me, who
Right.
move like me, who
Yeah.
navigate all these spaces like me on an everyday basis.
Right.
And I just felt that Tulsa was too small for me personally as a Nigerian,
Yeah.
Yoruba, Lagosian
Mm-hmm.
woman. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? But it was a remarkable experience.
Yeah. No, that's good, and I appreciate the honesty in that. I just have two more questions. If you can take us through a period of time where you had to hold on to hope, and what how did you define that? How did you make it out? It may have been a dark experience. It may have been a season of a period of time, or it could have been something that was just, a difficult conversation, or maybe it was the layoff that happened. But if you can identify a time where you had to hold on to hope, how did you do it, and what was the outcome?
That's a tough one because I just feel like there've been so many, right?
Okay. Yeah.
There've been so many, and so I would say that one of the difficult decisions that I've ever had to make, and I don't, I hate going back to this conversation, was me leaving Tulsa.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was challenging because, I was like, oh, not that you've made it, but I have achieved this.
What you want, we're seeking. Yes.
That I was seeking, right?
Mhm.
And this is where sometimes as humans, we're always chasing events. We're
Mhm.
always chasing, oh, if I do this, I will, that is success, right?
Right.
But I think what has helped me is understanding that success is a mindset.
That's good. Okay.
You know what I mean? Success is being able to say, like, those experiences do not define who I am as a person. To some
Cool.
degree, maybe it's like about your reaction to a situation. But I think for me, it's the evolution of understanding what success is independently of experiences.
Right.
And when that internet, when it was just multiple things, right? Where I
Mhm.
was like, hey, just push through.
Yeah.
What helped me was that my dad, when I was going to Tulsa, shout out to my father and my mother.
Mhm.
My mother said once, and this is a statement we're raised by: nothing ventured, nothing gained. And that was imprinted on the walls of a Tensa Capitol on the second floor. I don't know if it's still there, but it was there
Wow.
because I said that. That was why I was like, okay. And then my father said, this is what you have to do. Every single day, write down. So I got what do you call it?
Poster board.
A poster board, exactly. Yeah. And my dad said to me, every day you leave your house, look in that thing and orient yourself so you understand who you are, what you came here for, what you came to achieve, what happiness means to you, and what success means to you. Mm-hmm. And if one out of all those things and that lever is completely shifted, mm-hmm. orient yourself as to your why every single day. And the moment that it then became all those things were no longer, I was like, it's time to go.
It's time to go. I see.
Yep. But for me, I held on to hope because of the foundation that my parents gave me, the words, the wisdom.
Yeah.
But also their ability to know that I have hope because I can rely on them. I can rely on my siblings. Not a lot of people have that. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think that was what kind of kept me grounded. And just all the other experiences I've been through in life, quite frankly, not that they were hard, but I've done some crazy things in my career. I just, all right, things will always work out.
They'll work out. Somehow, some way, they will work out.
Some way. So I think what's important for people is to every single day, and I had a countdown, like every day I would come back home and I would erase the board and then say 236 more days left.
Got it.
You know what I mean? And I still had a lot of days left on that board. However, it's also knowing that it's okay to walk away. I think sometimes we're so tied to this outcome and it's like, just move.
You can change the plan.
So, and just understanding, so I think for me, it's like, it's the orientation is what gives me hope. And knowing that, you know what, some days you just have bad days. Some days you're like, there's no hope. World sucks. Life is awful. Yeah. And on those days, I make a decision, an active decision
to not stay there.
Then say, how do I choose to want this day to go on?
Yeah.
And how do I choose for it to end? And there's some days that I'm like, okay, close the blinds, turn the windows up, get on the comforter, take a nap, just wait till tomorrow.
Yeah. No, but I get it.
The moment you wake up, there's hope.
Say that again. I like that. I like that.
And these are my parents. Every single day, when you wake up, you have life. You take a breath. Yeah. In that moment, there's hope.
Wow.
So it's that decision that you literally actively have to make to give gratitude and give grace, and then say, if I'm able to wake up even if you don't have all your senses, right? But there's hope.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. That's really good, Aina. Was your dad an engineer or something?
My dad is probably should have been an engineer because he studied economics and then he studied philosophy and he has his PhD, so I guess it has a systematic way of thinking.
Yeah, I'm listening to the acute how acutely logical he is,
Yeah.
and like is very precise in what he's solving for in all
Yeah.
of his advice,
Yeah.
and it sounds very much like a the beautiful mind of an engineer or something like that.
He's a systems thinker, actually. It's funny, like when I go to my mom, I know why I go to my mom. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? My mom I love that woman. She's just like crushes. She just bum rushes.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
nothing comes in her way. Like she's just that person who acts and she thinks later. Like,
yeah.
I think there's a strength
There's a
to that.
balance. Yeah, absolutely.
If
Yeah,
you think too much, you would not get anything done,
you'll
right?
be paralyzed. Yeah.
You'd be paralyzed. But for
Hmm.
her, she's like, okay, this is what we want to do. Okay, let's go. Yeah. Oh, yeah, means let's go in Yoruba.
Hmm.
Like that woman, if not for her, the way she just like, we owe everything to her. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
My dad is more of like, okay, what are the variables at hand? What are the
Mhm.
unknowns?
Right.
How can you take this to this to this to make predictive decisions versus reactive decisions?
That's good. Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
So I think it was helpful
To have
and my
that
mom is also
balance.
a creative kind of like my dad is he's a poet, he's a writer, like studied in France for his master's and his PhD,
Hmm.
and then my mom, has her master's. So it's like a very like they just think differently, but we're able to have the balance of creativity and analytical way of thinking in the
Hmm.
household.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're a blend of both of them
Yeah.
because with the modeling everything on one side, and then
Yeah.
with the very, the scholastics and how
Yeah.
you, achieve the academic. So it sounds like you balance of both of them. Last
Okay.
question is, what is a call to action you would give to our listeners, and then that you would leave your handles, or how could people follow you, or maybe even follow Eye of Africa?
Yeah. Call to action. I would just say really truly find out why you're here. And
Mm,
what does that mean?
mhm,
The one thing I've learned to do, and this is during like my recruiting process, like, just as I'm recruiting for a full-time role, um, I think the call to action is finding your purpose,
mhm,
right? And it could be a statement. So I came up with a purpose statement. And that purpose
mhm,
statement is for me to champion and harness creativity in myself and others. So as
mm,
I interview for every job or as I interact with human beings, if you don't align with that statement,
mhm,
not for me.
mm.
Honestly speaking, like I literally orient myself with that purpose statement and everything that I touch, everything that I do, and who I interact with. Because
Wow.
for me, it's like success for me is when my purpose, my passion, and my power is able
Mhm.
to influence the impact that I want to see in this world.
Okay.
And power does not mean money always. Yes, it's extremely helpful. We need more
Right.
black people who are billionaires, millionaires, thousandaires. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like we just need more within our
Yeah.
ecosystem in
Yeah.
order for us to see change globally around the world.
Mhm.
But power could also be how do you use your social influence to drive change to empower others?
Right.
So just find out what your purpose is. Find out what your passion is. And it doesn't have to be big. It's just it could be, like I'm actually working with a few founders where I don't get paid for it, but I'm like,
Mhm.
you know what? You're trying to get capital. How do I help you pitch
Yeah.
for investments? How do I make introductions?
Mhm.
Right now I'm volunteering with an organization called Upwardly Global,
Mhm.
and it's to help new immigrants migrate to America. So how do they, jobs, interviews, coaching, all these different things. And the lady who I'm helping out now, she's a 61-year-old woman. I'm sorry, mid 60s,
Mhm.
who came from East Africa.
Mm.
And my job and she's, just interviewing is really, really challenged. She's worked in insurance her entire career.
Mm.
And what I do every 2 weeks, I get on a call, a 30-minute Zoom call with her and have a conversation. So she can be more confident when she's interviewing in
Right.
English.
Right.
That's championing somebody else.
Absolutely.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean? It's me empowering my nieces and my nephews to do whatever it is that they want to do, whereby money will not be an obstacle for them to say, I can't do X, Y, and Z because I cannot afford to. So they will
Right.
have the liberty and the freedom. to
Mhm.
achieve whatever it is that they want to achieve. And finances does not stop them from doing that. For me,
Yeah.
that is what my purpose is.
Wow.
So yeah, just find out what that thing is for you and the
Mhm.
legacy you intend to leave. And when you're no longer here, what if not so much what are people saying about you,
Mhm.
but what positive impact have you left? What
Mhm.
have you left in this world that lives beyond your physical existence?
That's good. That's good.
And how you can find me.
Sure.
Right now I'm not active on social media. I'm taking a
Okay.
social media mental break.
Ain't nothing wrong
However,
with that.
my personal Instagram is first and last name, Aina Fadina. Twitter is Aina_Fadina.
Mhm.
And Eye of Africa's Instagram is at the letter I, individualism of Africa.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's how you can find me. And if you really want my details, just ask Karen.
Okay, so can you tell us a little bit about the impact or the value of a Black woman being in venture capital and what that meant to you and what that means on a broader scale?
Look, venture is hard, right? Like, let's just
Yeah.
take everything outside of the equation. I think venture is a very, very, very risky asset class, right?
Hmm.
And venture is not for the faint of heart because I think only like 92% of companies are invested in are going to be successful. So
Yep.
when you think about that data point to even begin with, like why would everyone build a career in that given just how risky it's going to be?
Right.
However, when we think about those people who are allocating capital in the
Mhm.
VC world, it is not reflective of the population of people that are in the world.
Correct.
It's not reflective of of what the population will look like in 2050.
Hmm.
I think by 2050, 53% of the US population would no longer be white.
Correct.
However, we think about the people that have power to
Hmm.
allocate money to the funds of funds,
Hmm.
to the GPs, like the investment, like the VC companies,
Hmm.
to the investors. When you think about that whole trickle down effect,
Hmm.
they're not representative of who the population is.
Yeah.
So, as a Black woman, as a woman, period, like let's just
Hmm.
start with that bucket because,
Right.
whatever isms,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
As a woman, if we're 50% of the population, but then it's not reflective of those who are writing the checks, how do we invest in Black, female entrepreneurs
Right.
who are creating solutions? And also, who's making decisions in the home? It's not always the man. You know what
Yes.
I mean? And we also have earning power, earning potential, and
Hmm.
we're the ones who are making decisions for families, for kids, for parents, and all these different things, right? So when I think about what role I have to play as an immigrant, as a woman, as a
Hmm.
Black woman, it is so imperative when I walk into the room, and it's hard because it's like you're putting everyone's, like, you're carrying the weight of the world to some degree
Yep.
as a Black woman, and we've done that enough in society.
Right.
However, understanding that because I am in that room and I'm able, this is important, but I am able to make a decision. Don't just have, because we have enough VC firms who have us in the room, but
Yeah.
we're not driving decisions about how capital
Decisions.
is allocated.
Yes.
Exactly. If I'm at that table, I know that there will be a process as to how we think through an equitable lens of
That's
how
good.
we give capital. And also, it's just not capital, right? So if we don't give you capital, how do I make sure? And, women get enough, what do you call it? We get enough mentorship, right? But how do
Hmm.
you balance capital, access to that, and
Hmm.
also mentorship and guidance and all these different things?
Your
And
network.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
How do I get access to your network?
To your network.
Yeah.
To your
Yeah.
network.
Yeah.
When I was raising money for Eye of Africa, guess what?
Hmm.
The most influential person, he told me no. But
Hmm.
guess what? What he has given me and the access
Right.
that I have based on his network,
Right.
it's so much more than what that money would have done to influence my life. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
But I, like I said, when I'm at that table, or when I'm able to make a decision to, I can help to then say, oh, this is why we're not seeing this perspective of how you're looking at what the solution is, because you don't understand the way in which those consumers are existing every single day in their communities, how they're thinking. So that's why diversity is not just diversity of like, okay, yes, you're Black, but you went to Harvard and you've been an investment banker. No shade to those people.
Right.
You know what I mean? We need those people.
Right.
But how do we also have a diversity of thought, diversity of socioeconomic backgrounds at the table, diversity of gender, diversity of just everything?
Yeah.
To make sure we continue to progress to a society where we truly mean equity. It's not just about being on the same street as you, but you want me in a much smaller house. Nah, that's not equity.
Sounds good. I really appreciate this time. You are a rock star. I just want you to know that. And I want you to continue to do the great work that you're doing around the world. This has been so rewarding. So thank you. And for all of our listeners, thanks so much for tuning into another episode of New Voices. We will be back with some more wonderful guests for you. Also, please like, share, and follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. Until next time, continue to be blessed. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to this episode of New Voices. Visit our website at www.newutulsa.com. That is NEWUTulsa.com. Follow us on social media at New U Tulsa on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And a special thank you to our producer, Jesse Ulrich. If you're looking for self-improvement, join our free cohorts for personal and professional development opportunities. New You is a way for diverse talent to imagine, discover, and actualize a 2.0 version of yourself. Bring your future into focus.